Hello, friends, and welcome to the Creative Companion podcast. My name is Katrin, and this is my cozy little creative corner of the internet. And I'm so happy to have you here with me today. I'm starting this podcast this year, not only to serve as a creative outlet for myself, but also to act as an inspiration for all of you out there that are self-proclaimed creatives, that have a lot of creative hobbies that you want to pursue, or maybe a creative passion you've always thought about pursuing. And I really want this space to serve as an inspiration for you to feel safe to try out those creative hobbies or to take the time to do the creative hobbies that you've already been learning and pursuing. So today I am actually working on the step-by-step sweater by Florence Miller, the pattern I found on Revelry, because I am a beginner knitter and this is my first sweater that I've ever made. I decided I wanted something to challenge myself to do some color work. Now the color work is my own design. That is not part of her pattern, but the shape is all from Florence Miller. So you can see that I have the body already done and one sleeve already constructed, and I am working on the second sleeve, so I'm very nearly finished. So I'm going to be working on this as we chat today. So if you stick around, grab something that you've been working on, or maybe you want to doodle or paint or whatever kind of creative hobby you have, go ahead and grab that and let's hang out for a bit. So I thought a great first topic for this podcast would be to just talk about what creative process is. Now, I did go to design school, and I also took art classes the whole time I was growing up. I come from a family of artists. Really and truly, creativity has just been a part of my life since before I can remember. Many of you are probably like me in that sentiment. Maybe you've just always considered yourself to be a creative person, or maybe you've always wanted to be a creative person and you've wanted to try out creative hobbies and you just weren't really even sure where to start. Well, I can tell you that even though I was surrounded by artistic pursuits my whole life, I was never really taught about creative process or creative thinking until I was in college. That might sound really weird because you're probably like, well, how did you not know how to think creatively if you were constantly in art classes? And the thing about it is, you can learn how to technically do a skill, but to think creatively is a whole different ballgame. And the really cool thing about learning to creatively think or to learn a creative process that works for you is it's not about learning what to think or how to solve a creative problem in a correct way. In fact, there really is no correct way to do anything creative, but it's more about learning how to think through the problem at hand. Now, if you're sitting there and thinking, well, of course there's a correct way to do things, you're knitting, there's obviously a correct way to knit. Yes, there is. But when you're thinking about, for instance, coming up with a color work pattern, other than making sure that you have a pattern that fits within the number of stitches that you're doing, there's really no limit as to what you can design and create. Same with like shape of a garment. Yes, there are like technical skills that you need in order to create the garment that you want to create or draw the picture that you want to draw. But once you know those basic skills and you have an understanding of like how things work within the medium that you're working with, there's really no limit as to what you can create within that medium. And that's what I find really, really fascinating about thinking creatively or having a creative process that works for you. Now, creative process can be defined in a whole number of different ways, and actually when you Google creative process, it's broken down into 5 steps. I, however, have chosen to break it down into 4 steps, and that's just because these are the steps that I take when I'm creating something new. And I happen to be a creative business owner myself. I run my own graphic design company, so I spend a lot of time thinking about my own design process and my creative process when I'm creating for a client. So this is just kind of the setup that works within my own business. Again, there's not really a right or wrong way to have a creative process. So I'm just going to share my creative process with you, and you can take from it what you want, and you can leave what you don't want. This is really just to give any of you that need a starting point to kind of have some guidance as to how to form a creative process or how to just get comfortable with creating in the first place. and this is just what works for me. Now, the way that I'm choosing to break down my own creative process is into 4 stages. First, there's contemplation, and then there's ideation, and then there's experimentation or expression, and then finally there's examination. So I'm going to walk through all 4 of those and kind of explain them on a deeper level. But again, you may have another step within your process. You may have less steps within your process. But I find that these 4 steps are absolutely essential whenever I'm starting something new or I'm trying to come up with original ideas. So the first thing being contemplation. Really what that means is observing the world around you and gathering as much inspiration as you can. Now, some people don't like to gather specific inspiration for, say, the industry that they're working within or within the specific medium that they're working. And that's just because some people either find it to be stifling when they have too much inspiration that's similar to the ideas that they already are kind of churning around in their mind. You never want to end up copying someone else's work when you're trying to create something original. Now, when you are a beginner, like I am a beginner knitter, of course, it is perfectly reasonable to follow tutorials like this pattern that I'm using, or if you're like a beginner painter or something like that, of course you're going to learn by studying master artists that have come before you. When I say observe the world and find inspiration, really what I'm talking about is if you are, say, new to painting, look at the things that are really inspiring to you. Look at the way the sunset colors blend together. Look at the way the patterns of leaves fall on the ground in kind of a beautiful, abstract, chaotic way in the fall. Yes, there is inspiration to be found within the mediums that you're working with or within the subject matter even that you're working with, but there's also inspiration to be found in places that have really little or nothing to do with what you're trying to create. When I was thinking about the colors that I wanted to use for this sweater, I was actually really thinking about what I have in my head as kind of like the iconic 90s sweater. I could be way off with the colors that I chose. Maybe no one in the 90s actually wore a sweater this color, but that doesn't really matter to me. I love kind of fall color palettes, and when I think about 90s fall color palettes, something about this like gold and green and cream color, it's kind of showing up green right now in my camera at the moment, but this is actually a really lovely like almost cream color because the sweater that I'm wearing is almost white, so I don't know why it's looking so green at the moment. But then we have like a golden color and a darker green. And those just really spoke to me as like fall colors. And the diamond pattern just felt like very 90s to me in a way. During the contemplation phase, that's also the time to look for any areas of neglect or things that people haven't explored yet or things that have been overlooked within the mediums that you are exploring. So what I mean by this is, say you are a sculptor or something like that. While it's super powerful to look at the great sculptors that have come before you and have kind of paved the way for your medium, maybe take a look at the types of human emotion that hasn't been fully explored in the way that you would explore it within your medium. Or maybe there's some kind of concept from a book or an article that you read that you think could be really cool and expressed in a really unique way within a 3D sculpture. This is how artists all over the world come up with brand new concepts, right? They look and see what hasn't been done yet, or what ideas haven't fully been explored in the way that they think they could be explored. It may also seem super obvious to you guys, but this is also a great part of the process to look at areas of your life that have really impacted you, things that give you a unique story to share. I remember I was in design school with a girl who was left-handed, and she had a unique experience that the rest of us didn't have when it came to even just sitting at desks and not having enough things that were set up for left-handed people. Again, that was not my lived experience, so that was totally unique to her in that most of the class had not even considered that. She was an architecture student, but she had a lot of input for some of the industrial design students that were creating products, and letting them know how left-handed people can be a really left out demographic when it comes to product design. If you don't have anything in your life that immediately jumps out to you as something that, would allow you to tell a unique story or to put your own personal touch into it, this can sometimes be something that presents itself down the line. Before I learned to knit, I crocheted for a bit, and I started by crocheting little toys for my nephews. That was not something I had ever really explored before, but once my brother and his wife started having kids, I decided that I wanted to learn how to crochet cute little stuffed animals for them. And that was something that obviously I probably would not have done before I had children in my life to create for. But I ended up making little stuffed animals for several of my friends' kids. And I recently had a baby earlier this year, and I made him several toys as well while I was pregnant for him. So some of these things that pop up in your life can happen way on down the line, and they can be huge sources of inspiration for the things that you want to create. And I've kind of already touched on this, but this again is a great time to look at what's already been done and see how it has been handled. Now, again, if we're going back to the sculpture metaphor, there are a lot of sculptors, that sculpt, say, dancers, another art form. And you have some sculptors that do really realistic dancers. You have some sculptors that do really modern, minimalist dancers. You have some sculptors that do really abstract interpretations of what a dance would look like. And each of those kind of formations of this idea of, say, a dancer or a ballerina, those all came about by looking at what had been done before, seeing those areas that maybe were lacking, and putting their own unique ideas and spin on it. But this contemplation phase is really just kind of collecting inspiration. Of course, for my design clients, I spend a lot of time putting together kind of mood boards for them. And this is not necessarily to say that I pick out logo ideas. In fact, I stray away from that completely. If I'm doing a logo or a brand for a client, I greatly limit the amount of other logos that we look at for inspiration. Instead, I try to look at overall vibe that we're going for. What are some other components that we would want to bring into their brand? What are we thinking about in terms of packaging? What are we thinking about in terms of color palette? What are we thinking about in terms of marketing and photography and things like that? And from those ideas, we can kind of start to see a brand image evolve. And a lot of times from there, it makes it a lot easier to pick out fonts or create custom fonts, create brand icons or imagery that would really resonate across the brand and feel like a really cohesive package at the end of the day. Sometimes I'll look at other larger brands as inspiration to say okay, if we're going to look at Dior and how they handle their marketing campaign and we're going to use that as inspiration, I'm obviously not going to copy the Dior logo. I would never do that. That would be a stupid move because Dior is so well known, obviously. But we can look to the type of vibe that we're going for as a source of inspiration and see what hasn't been done yet. See what's lacking in the luxury market that maybe my client could tap into. The next phase is the ideation phase. So this is a really fun part of the process. This is where you just start spitballing ideas. And I'm talking just brain dump every idea that you have had as you are looking through inspiration. Put down bad ideas. Put down ideas that you would never want to show another person in your life. Just absolutely run wild with ideas. I love to keep a notebook, or I love to jot down ideas in my notes app even, and just really and truly let things run wild. I don't like to get a ton of input before I've started getting ideas out. Usually when I am approaching a new project, I have some kind of general idea of what I'm going for. Even starting this sweater, I was I know I generally want some sort of stripe situation and some kind of diamond situation. I wasn't really sure what it was going to look like until I started playing around with some diamond patterns. I tested out a few different things. I even tested out some larger diamonds. I tested out doing multiple rows of diamonds, and I just finally settled on just doing a simple stripe and one row of diamonds and then doing simple stripes in other areas on the sweater, keeping that as a really like statement area of the sweater. Now, I could have gotten people's opinions on this. You know, when you're in the ideation phase, a lot of people feel like they need other people's input. I would say limit the amount of input that you get, again, until you get some of your initial ideas down. It's always fun to put together several different ideas and then ask someone close to you, maybe a spouse or a partner, or even your best friend or your parent, and see which one they like best. If you're a painter, this is the perfect time to kind of do some preliminary sketches, try out different compositions, different lighting styles, and again, see which one really resonates with you. I think that it's a really good idea to kind of take a break from the ideas after you get them all out of your head. Maybe step away for the evening or maybe even a few days and revisit them at a later time and see if any of them really jump out at you. It can be surprising which ideas end up being the best ideas long term. Sometimes they're not the ones you think. Or sometimes they're like the 5th or 6th or 20th iteration of something that you're working on. This is also the time, I think, to be somewhat open to suggestion after you've gotten some initial ideas out. Once you've shown your work to someone else and they're like, oh, what if you did this? Or what if you tried this? I think that's actually a really good thing. And it's something that I miss, having worked in my own business for so many years. I've owned my own design company for over 8 years now. And I really miss the collaborative nature of working on a team of people. I had that in college, and even though I've had a small team on and off throughout the years, I've had a junior designer work with me here and there, and I do some development work for other designers. So I do get to collaborate with their teams, which is always really fun. But there's something to be said about getting someone else's perspective. It can really broaden the ideas that you initially had. I don't think that the best ideas come from burying your head in the dirt and not ever looking outside of your own little tunnel vision. I think that in order to create something really impressive and really lasting, I think that it is really important to get other people's perspective, if for nothing else, to just give your ideas something fresh, a fresh pair of eyes to look at them, some fresh ideas. It can be really easy sometimes, especially if you've been working for yourself or doing the same hobby for a long time, for your things to start to all look the same. And I'm not talking about like if you have a certain style that you're known for. Obviously, that's a good thing. But if you're trying to think outside the box and you're trying to create something really exciting and inspiring to others, sometimes it's necessary to push ourselves outside of our typical ideas or our typical comfort zone. I also think that this is the part in the process where it's okay to spend a lot of time. When you're in the ideation phase, this is where you're really laying the groundwork and foundation for everything else that you're going to do. So sit with your ideas, mull over your ideas. Think about them as you're out on your daily walk or in your exercise class. Again, you'll be surprised the types of things you'll think of when you just give yourself space and you're not sitting there just, banging your head against a sketchbook and trying to get good ideas to come out. You need to play, you need to test out your ideas, you need to try different things, and you're really giving yourself room to explore. Now you may be like, hold up, I thought the third phase was experimentation and expression, and it is. But once you have all of your ideas and concepts kind of out in front of you, now it's time to put those ideas into action and see which ones actually work. Usually for my clients, I have like 3 or 4 ideas at this stage that I'm really excited about and I want to show to them. But I have to spend a little bit more time fleshing them out and seeing if any of them really and truly fit the idea that my client and I are trying to convey within their brand or their website. This is the part of the process where you try something, you fail at it, you try again, you fail at it, you try again. And at some point it will work. When I was first learning to knit, I think I did a cast on, I'm not even joking, like 50 times before I got an even cast on my needles. I absolutely wish that I was joking, and I am so not. It took me so many times, and I just kept taking it off and doing it again and taking it off and doing it again. And I know that for a lot of people, that can be an incredibly frustrating thing. They want to just be able to do it and it work and they can move on. But for any sort of creative pursuit, it's all in the consistency, it's all in the almost repetition of it and just figuring out how to do something consistently. Now I have no problem casting on, but that first project was a doozy because I tried it, I failed, I tried it again, I failed again, and I did it on and on until I got it the way that I wanted. And so often we see perfectionism playing a role in limiting our creativity because so many people are afraid of this step. People are afraid of the experimentation step where they can fail, and they probably will, especially when you're learning a new creative skill. But think about something that you're really, really good at, right? Whether that's something physical, like riding a bike. I bet you fell plenty of times when you were first learning to ride a bike. Or maybe you're a musician, and I am willing to bet that you probably didn't play your favorite song perfectly the first time you tried. We learn so much from the times that we fail. And really and truly, I think that that is what is so amazing about the human experience. We're not perfect every time. If we were all perfect every time we did anything, life would be so boring. There would be no point in getting better at anything. You're already perfect at it. There would be no exceptional musicians. There would be no exceptional dancers or artists or anything because we all can do that. We all can sit down and play a song perfectly or sing it perfectly or draw perfectly. Instead, we all get to try these things and we get to work towards them and we get to see improvement every day and we get to try and fail. And over time, we get to look back at all those failures and see just how far we've come. And to me, that's a really special thing. That's a really incredible thing, actually. I always tell friends of mine that are afraid to try new creative hobbies because they're worried they're not going to be good at it. I'm like, yeah, you probably won't be. And how amazing is that? You have so much room to grow. Nobody, and I mean nobody, is good at it the first time they try. So just go ahead and take that pressure off of yourself and instead just try and see it as a learning experience. Create as many iterations as something as you need before you land on the one that you are truly happy with. That's why I say this is the experimentation phase or the expression phase, because this is where you get to truly express yourself. This is where you get to pick the idea that really feels like the perfect one for what you're wanting to create. This is where you look at your series of sketches for your next painting and you say, that's the one. That's the one I'm most excited about. That's the one that I can't wait to see on a huge canvas. That's the one I can't wait to see come to life. And honestly, maybe there's a couple that stand out to you, and that's even better because, hey, now you have 2 projects to look forward to and 2 expressions to see fully formed and come to life. And once you find those things that really click, you need to lean into them. This is your chance to fully express yourself. This is your chance to make those ideas a reality. That's your chance to create something totally unique to you that nobody else can do because they aren't you. Okay, we've reached our point of adding on our first stripe onto the sleeve. So let me get out my gold yarn here. Oh gosh, it's all kind of in a tangle. This might take me a second. Okay, we got it. Now finally, we have the examination part of our process. This is when you have finished your idea, you have fully expressed what you want to express, and now you sit back and you kind of take inventory of how that whole process went. You also watch how other people interact with your work, which is easier to do when you have something that you are presenting to the world in a way, whether you're a dancer or a musician or a fine artist like a painter or a sculptor. If you have a way of exhibiting your art and seeing how other people interact with it, that obviously makes this a lot easier. You can always get feedback from people in just how you see people comment on your work. Maybe you're really into embroidery or cross stitch and people always comment on the colors that you choose for your work. That can feel really empowering moving forward into your next project because you know that you have this special gift of picking out colors that are just beautiful and speak to people. Maybe it's not as important to you though to see how other people react, and maybe it's just more important to you that you feel good about what you've created. Truth be told, I don't really care if anyone else likes this sweater. I'm so excited to wear this sweater when I'm done. And I'm going to be really proud to wear it, I think, because I've never made a sweater before. I've made a sweater vest, but this is like the fourth thing I've ever knitted. And I've learned so many new things from doing this project and following the pattern by Florence Miller. I can decide for myself that this is what I set out to accomplish. And I can be really happy with the final product, even if nobody ever notices it or ever comments on it. Chances are my husband will probably comment on it because he's seen me working on it so much. But outside of that, I'm just going to be stoked to wear it for my own self. But during this examination period, this is when you can really decide if what you created fully lives up to what you wanted to create. Either what emotion you wanted to express, or what techniques you wanted to learn, or what ideas you wanted to get out into the world. This is your chance for some reflection, and I am all about having reflection in my daily life and within my work as well. I think it's really important to have some sort of reflection or introspective period, especially if you're a creative. Chances are you think really deeply about things and things matter a lot to you. So giving yourself space to kind of contemplate the project as a whole once you're done can not only give you a sense of accomplishment, like, yeah, I set out to create this thing and I did it. But also to just kind of check in with yourself of like, did I even enjoy that process? Did I set out to do one thing and ended up doing something totally different? And maybe my ideas or people's other ideas, maybe it just all kind of got away from me at some point. It's okay to have those kinds of reflections as well, and you can apply those to your next project just as much as you can apply something positive. This is also where I would challenge you to be okay with the fact that your expression or your idea may not have turned out perfectly. Something that was really challenging about design school that I was really and truly not prepared for in a way was the fact that there was never like a critique where the professor was like, you did it. You did the thing, you did it perfectly, congratulations, this was the best idea ever. That never happened for any student, not just myself. Every single class and every single critique that I had throughout every semester, the professors would always be like, I like what you did, if they liked it, of course. But what if you had done this? What if you had tried this idea? And they were constantly pushing us to continue to think, continue to come up with ideas, which can be hard for some people because some people want an end goal, right? You want to be able to say, okay, that's done. I can move on now with my life. And you absolutely can. You absolutely can decide when and if you are done with a project. But knowing that there is no right answer also means that there's no wrong answer. And that's really freeing. Creating is simply about self-expression and figuring out how to convey your ideas and emotions to the world. And there's no right or wrong way to do that. During this examination period, maybe you'll be really happy with the work that you did. And maybe you'll still be able to point to things that maybe didn't turn out perfectly within that work. Again, I'm really happy with this, but I can see that on the back, my lines don't line up perfectly right here. And that kind of bothers me, I'm not gonna lie, but I also have really long hair. And that's going to be on the back of the sweater, and chances are my long hair will cover it up anyway, so I'm not going to fret about it. I don't even know why that occurred. Maybe if some of you are knitters, you can tell me in the comments why that happened or how to fix it in the future. Chances are, as I knit more, I will learn how to have my rows look really even and not have those kind of gaps in them. It only happened in that spot because that's where my round was starting when I was doing this top part of the sweater. But then once I got to the arms, the round started under one of the arms. So my stripes are even from there on down. So it's just kind of funny. It's just those rows right at the top. But whatever, it's not perfect, it's handmade, and I'm still really stinking proud of this sweater. Really and truly, this examination period is just to give you a launching off point for your next project. So maybe there are things that went well, maybe there are new techniques you learned, maybe there are things that could have gone better. And all of that information, when you kind of can catalog it and understand it and how to apply it to future work, that's only going to make your creative process better, and it's only going to make your work better. I truly think that my work as a creative business owner has improved the way I handle my personal projects as well. There used to be a point in time where I was such a perfectionist that I would just be riddled with anxiety if things didn't go absolutely perfectly. I'm really coming around to the idea that as humans, most things don't come perfectly. And again, that's just part of it, right? That's part of creative expression. I'm learning to enjoy the journey, enjoy the process, and learn something with every new project that I do. Okay, and now we are ready for our green color. I actually need to check something on the other sleeve because I have to make sure that these are even, or at least as even as I can hopefully make them. I thought I was doing that right, and I was. See, I just had to trust my instincts. Now, I do say that this examination period should come at the end of your project, and I specifically say that because I do believe that there should be an end to every project. Yes, there will always be new ideas you could explore. Yes, there will always be things left on the table that you didn't quite figure out this time, and that's okay. Sometimes you just have to be okay with letting a project be finished and move on so that you can start something fresh with fresh perspective, fresh ideas. I feel like so often as creatives, maybe this comes back into play with the perfectionist thing, but we get stuck with an idea sometimes that even when it's not working, we're just so dang determined that we're gonna make it work and we're gonna see it through to the end. But then when it's not working, we keep going back to the drawing board and we're trying something different, and it just can go on and on and on. I know with a writer friend of mine, they have a tendency to continually edit their book and never be finished with it. And while sure, there's always words you can change, there's always things that you could edit within the pages, at some point you have to say, I'm done. And whatever this project looks like is what it is. And you have to be content enough with the final outcome to allow yourself to pursue other ideas and to allow yourself to learn from it. I think so much of being a creative is just learning from your mistakes and trying again. You can't be afraid of saying something's done and maybe it's not perfect, or maybe people won't like it, or maybe people won't see the vision that I had for this. That's okay. You know, that's fine. Stuff I created in high school that I thought was just gonna be my defining art piece. You know, when I look back at it, I'm like, yeah, obviously a 15-year-old did this. And there's no shame in that. I'm really proud of the stuff that I did at 15 years old. But I can also see how that was a jumping off point for the work that I did when I was 18, or the work that I did when I was 21 or 25 or now 33. We're all just progressing through life, and we're learning along the way and hopefully improving along the way. And your creative process should be just that, right? A catalyst to help you improve on the things that you really enjoy doing. Now, again, some people define creative process in a much more thorough manner. Some people break it down into 8 steps or more. And of course, you absolutely can. Again, there's no right or wrong way to think about any of this. For a long time within my business, I broke down my own design process into 3 sections instead. I had the discovery phase with my clients where we did all the initial inspiration gathering and initial ideation kind of lumped together. And then we had the really refining concepts that we were excited about section, which of course I called the design phase. And then typically, we have the development phase for websites. That means coding and actually seeing what we can physically implement onto their website. But I also have a development phase for my branding clients, and that is refining those ideas even further, really fleshing out the full brand to see its full potential. Again, when it comes down to marketing and any of their packaging designs, maybe their email list designs, you name it, whatever that client needs. So in a way, I have a simplified version of my creative process for my design process, or at least I simplify it in terms of what I explain to the client. But all the same things are there. I'm still going through my creative process, coming up with ideas, exploring different options, seeing which ones really resonate with the client and with their ideal customer, and then picking the best one, really leaning into that idea and creating a full-fledged brand and website around that. Having a good design process or a good creative thought process works for any creative medium that you happen to be in. Of course, it's impossible for me to name every single creative medium that there is out there because there are just like millions. But I hope you can see how this is applicable to, if you're really into photography, how there are so many different ideas that you can explore. There's so much inspiration out there to look through. There's so many ways to express your unique ideas and try out new techniques that you've been wanting to try for a long time and see what really works for you. If you're a musician and you really want to write your own music, same sort of thing, right? Like chances are you probably have musical inspirations with artists that you really love. You probably have your favorite songs that you've listened to 1,000,001 times and can do a mean karaoke. But then I'm sure there's so many experiences unique to your life that you could come up with new ideas or new ways of expressing the same thought. I mean, think how many songs there are about heartbreak. I would actually be so interested to know if someone knows the number of songs that are about heartbreak, because I feel like that's like the main emotion that people want to write songs about. It's a universal feeling, but people have such unique experiences with getting their heart broken. There's always a huge amount of things to express when it comes to expressing heartbreak. A big thing is not allowing yourself to get caught up in the fact that like, gosh, there's so many songs about heartbreak. How could I possibly write one and have it mean anything? Someone's probably written a better heartbreak song than I ever will. You're just setting yourself up for failure if that's how you're going through your creative process. Because sure, yeah, there are 1,000,001 songs written about heartbreak, but no one has said what's in your head. No one has said your exact experience. Furthermore, no one has your voice. No one plays an instrument like you do. There's always something unique that you can bring to the table. I hope that with this podcast, that as I go through episodes each week, I hope that I can just inspire you to, again, try something new or have fun creating in the first place. I firmly believe that everyone has it in them to harness their creativity in some form or fashion. Humans are innately creative people, even if you think I am not a creative person whatsoever. I guarantee that there is probably something out there that you would really, really enjoy that is some sort of creative hobby. Maybe you've been told that you aren't a creative person throughout your life. Maybe you just feel like you've known more creative people. And maybe that's what's holding you back, is you have just compared yourself and you have this imposter syndrome when it comes to being a creative or thinking creatively. I hope that these videos will just kind of break the stigma of what it means to be a creative person and explain a bit more about how we all can tap into creative energy and find things that we're really excited about, hobbies that we really enjoy, or passion projects that we just can't get enough of. I would love to know what you guys were working on today while I sat here and knitted and chatted with you. If you have a project you're working through, or if you have an idea that you're really looking forward to pursuing, please tell me about it. I would love to hear about it. Maybe you've been thinking about starting a YouTube channel, or maybe you do have a YouTube channel. Let's connect on YouTube and be friends and support each other in our creative endeavors here on this platform. Since this is the first episode of the Creative Companion podcast, obviously, I'm still kind of figuring out how I want this podcast to go, but I have lots of ideas for episodes as we work our way through the spring and summer, and I will be posting once a week. At least that is my goal. So please tune in every Wednesday. I'll be posting every Wednesday on YouTube and on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify if you just want to listen to the podcast itself. But I'm going to be working on a project every time I come on here. Maybe I will still be working on this sweater. We'll see. But I hope that you have enjoyed this episode as kind of an initial deep dive into creative process and creative thinking. If you have anything to add, please let me know. If you feel like I left something out, let me know. I feel like I've just kind of rambled here as I've knitted, so chances are I did leave out something. And let's see, we got a few rows done here. How many did I do? I did 10 rows. We got through the bit of stripes here on the sleeve. Up next is the diamond pattern, which I may have to do off camera anyway, just because that takes a little bit more thinking. But I hope you got a lot done on your project as well. Or if you were just hanging out today, thanks so much for being here. And next time, bring a project, bring a coloring book, sit down with a sketchbook and draw, or whatever you're feeling like doing. I hope that I can be your creative companion, and you certainly were mine today. So thanks for creating with me.